Hello there, and thanks for staying with us. It's people, politics, and power. The sudden mass surrender of Boko Haram terrorists in recent times has become a source of intense controversy. Many are struggling to understand and explain this turn of events. Many more are understandably angry and disappointed that the government, through the military, is welcoming the so-called repentant terrorists with open arms rather than prosecuting them for their atrocities, which include but not limited to taking up arms against their country, mass murder, maiming of innocent persons, kidnapping and abduction, rape, slavery, destruction of livelihoods, and other forms of crimes against humanity. Yet some others think that if Nigeria must end the over 12-year-old insurgency that has seen a massive drain on human and material resources of the nation, it should not only welcome the voluntary surrender, but put in place a process of de-radicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration of these persons into the society without any let or hindrance and without recourse to the many atrocities they committed these many years. They want them reunited with their communities and persons whose lives they completely shattered and destroyed in the over a decade-long war without any form of sanctions for their conscious choice of criminality, brigandage, and unrestrained bloodletting. Reports indicate that over 2,000 members of the group and their families have so far surrendered to troops, either out of their free will or due to intense pressure from the sustained offensive of the military. They are said to include top commanders, bomb-making experts, and other fighters in the group. This has expectedly generated apprehension among citizens, government officials, victims of the atrocities of the insurgents, and even in the camps of the terrorists. But perhaps more worrisome are stories and pictures of these terrorists being happily welcomed by troops and being provided with food, drinks, clothes, and other essentials, even when their victims who have been internally displaced for many years do not have access to such items. Nigerians ask whether these surrendering terrorists can be trusted. Is their move informed by altruistic repentance? Will the action of government encourage or trigger more insurrection and possible anarchy in those immediate communities? How does government hope to bring relief to the victims of this over decade-long crisis? What are the security implications of this mass surrender? If these self-proclaimed repentant terrorists are being treated as prisoners of war, as claimed by the Minister of Information, what steps are being taken and should be taken to conform with the UN Convention on Engagement with War Prisoners? Under international law, there are also war criminals who cannot be allowed to walk free with their crimes. As far as we know, the Nigerian government has not declared any form of amnesty for these insurgents. So on what basis are they being prepared for reintegration into society? Join us as we do a risk assessment of this developing story. We'll get to meet our guest analyst right after now. Stay with us. All right, thank you so much. Let's get to meet our guest analyst Two of them are right here with us in the studio, and two others are joining us virtually via Zoom. Let's begin from here in the studio, where we have Dr. Colonel John Adache. He is a defense and security analyst and a communication pundit. Dr. Colonel John Adache, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Also joining us here in the studio is Idris Ibrahim Halilu. He's the coordinator and spokesperson for the FCT-based IDPs, in those who are in IDP camps in the Federal Capital Territory. Mr. Halilu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, joining us virtually from Lagos is Benro Olajuigbe. He is of the Emergency Risk Alert Initiative. Thank you so much, Benro, for finding time to join us. And
it's a pleasure being with you.
Adamawa State, in Yola specifically, we are also joined virtually by Barrister Sunday Joshua Wugira. He is a senior special assistant to the governor of Adamawa State on public affairs. Mr. Wugira, thank you for finding time to join us.
It's my pleasure. Good afternoon, viewers.
Mr. Wugira, I hope you can hear us.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Good. Thank you so much. All right.
It's my pleasure.
Let's begin from here in the studio. Colonel Adache, has this surrender by some elements of the Boko Haram and possibly ISWAP too, has it come to you as a surprise?
Well, somehow it's a surprise, and on the other hand, it is not a surprise because war settings are not static. Things keep happening, dynamic processes. And therefore, if all of a sudden there is a surrender process ongoing in the Northeast, it probably could be as a result of certain factors. Because surrendering normally is a capitulation process between two fighting forces, one to the other, as a result of probably overwhelming force or other factors deriving from the war setting. Therefore, it's not much of a surprise if all of a sudden it happens, because we do know that for some time now there has been problem between Boko Haram leaders and those of the ISWAP, which led to, as we were told, the death of Shekau, the leader of Boko Haram. Since then, followers of Shekau have been sort of disoriented within those battle settings, and they are in disarray, more or less. They are not in good terms, or they are being maltreated by forces of ISWAP. And therefore, the options probably they have is that of surrendering.
All right, Mr. Halilu, so it appears that from what Colonel has said, a number of reasons why he thinks that these people are surrendering. Maybe because of the intense military pressure that is ongoing at the moment, and it could also be because of internal wranglings within the ranks of the terrorists themselves in the different camps that exist. But there are also those who think that some of them may actually be tired of the 12-year-long war, and that is why they are giving themselves up.
Well, as far as we are concerned, we are not surprised that these events came to be. There had been intense pressure, of course, from the military onslaught on the insurgents. But as far as the war, as Colonel had mentioned, the removal of Shekau from the scene actually created room for that. We expected it, from that area. Since Shekau was not there, because he captivated so many, he was the Lord over. And what we heard it from reliable sources that it were children of the victims that went to train and asked to be allowed to reach out to him. First, there was a diplomatic approach, which he couldn't accept. Then those young ones entered, and so we expected it, and it came to happen. We are happy.
All right, let me turn to you, Mr. Gbenro Olajuigbe. You have done a lot of work in this area. As far as risk assessment is concerned in that part of the country and with the insurgency in Nigeria. Now, is there a possibility that these insurgents, those that are giving themselves up now, see that there is no future continuing with this war?
It's not about whether there is future for but it could be even what the military used to call tactical withdrawal. It could be part of their strategy to relaunch, to reinvent themselves and to relaunch themselves into society they are victimized, re-victimized, and capable of continuing the effort of victimization of that society and our people. So that could be it. And you have to understand the context of this crisis that have gone up in the last 12 years. These people continue to reinvent themselves without us giving due diligence to thought of assessment of psychopathic agents like Boko Haramites. They are capable of doing several things, including ploy to ensnare society, so that when you think that you are they have already surrendered to you, they reinvent themselves and relaunch attack on society. They feel that they have deceived into submission again. But no matter the motivation for the so-called surrender, one thing is clear. If they are integrated into society, that will be prejudicial to the national effort we have made in the last 12 years. Is crude and cruel travesty of justice to those that have been killed, to those that have been maimed, to those that have been decapitated by this atrocious character that has invaded our land and our psyche in the last 12 years. As a matter of fact, it's, like I said, it's a re-victimization of the victims. If we have to accept whatever they are saying, just like that, without a critical assessment, and albeit, this brings us to the concept of what we call war and mental disorder. It's a mental torture for society that have been traumatized in the last 13 years to be thinking that mere surrender should afford a set of people accommodation in a society they have rejected, in a society they have decimated in the most horrendous way, in a society they have killed her people, destroyed our national fabric, and to the extent of bringing down the old lessons of governance, to the extent that we have a society that has become a state of anomaly. I think the government should be cautious. The government should be conscious. The people too should be careful. And I'm happy that people in government, like the governor of Borno State, have expressed this concern. Shehu of Borno has expressed this concern. And a right-thinking Nigeria should not take this for what Boko Haram has called it. It's not a surrender. I can assure you of that. It's a mere a dog looking for food so that it will be empowered to bite again. That is what we should all be careful about. And if you have to accommodate them at all, then build a correctional center for them. They should not see the sun and light of Nigerian society for a very long time, not in the next 5 years or 10 years, before you can begin to talk of reintegration of this character that have put Nigeria in throes of death, in throes of national calamity, in throes of inexplainable anarchy that we have had in the last 12 years.
Okay.
We should be very, very careful, very, very concerned. The surrender they are touting is a tactical withdrawal, equivalent of military tactical withdrawal, so that they will reinvigorate themselves for a future war.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Laju Igbe. Please stay with us. Let's cross over to Oyola in Adamawa State and talk to the man who is on ground here. I mean, Adamawa State is one of the 3 states in the northeast that has borne the brunt of terrorism in the last 12 years. How have the people there received this news of the surrender there? Barrister Sunday Joshua Wugira. Barrister Wugira, if you can hear us, when you need to tell us how the people are receiving and reacting to this development.
Well, here in Adamawa State, the people of Adamawa State and the government of Adamawa State are keenly watching. We have experienced the challenges of Boko Haram firsthand, particularly in the 7 frontier local governments that were occupied by the Boko Haram insurgents between September 2014, that is Madagali and Michika, and then October 2014 to December 2014. That is Mubi North, Mubi South, Maiha, Hong, and Gombe, 7 local governments that were occupied by the Boko Haram insurgents. We lost people, we lost materials, territories were completely taken over by the Boko Haram insurgents. Fortunately, for the combined efforts of the Nigerian Armed Forces, the the civilian hunters and vigilantes coming up together to push them back to the axis where they gained entrance to Adamawa State, that is Goza in Borno State. Our losses cannot truly be quantified and has never been quantified. There was never any attempt to take statistics of the people who lost their lives, the people that were maimed, the people who incurred losses in materials and possessions. And at the same time, there was very little effort to ensure that there is the assurance in concrete terms that this does not happen again, particularly by the government at the center, save the effort made by the government of Adamawa State so far. And by now, we expected as a people, not as the government, that government will ensure justice, even for the memory of the people who died, who lost their lives, who lost their limbs, who are permanently disfigured as a result of this needless crisis that we have at hand. Now, with the coming of the news that some insurgents are surrendering, for whatever reason, people on the street are concerned and agitated. If truly these people are surrendering, on what terms? What we see on the pages of newspapers and televisions are pictures of people with young men, young women, and children coming to surrender. Why is it that what we only see is just picture of men, women, and children? Where are their weapons? Where are their tools of war? These people are said to be in possession of armored personnel carriers, RPGs, surface to air missiles, rocket launchers, AK-47s, motorcycles, Hilux vans, desert trucks. Where are these possessions of their own, priceless possessions of their own, with which they terrorize people, with which they pauperize people, with which they kill people, with which they waylay the army, military personnel, kill them? Where are these materials? Or are just people coming to surrender, just like that, in the name of surrendering? These are guerrillas who, if ordinarily they are to be using bare arms or bows and arrows, it wouldn't have been this terrible for a nation, for a people.
Yes, Mr. Wugira,
So
you have asked some very, very vital questions. You have put a lot on the table for all of us to chew. But let me bring up a track-up from Brigadier General Onyema Nwachukwu, who is the Director of Army Public Relations, when he spoke on what the Army thinks is the reason for the surrender of these terrorists.
So this is not Afghanistan. We are very conscious of the fact that there could be some kind of gimmick on the part of ISWAP. But when you take a good look at what's happening between ISWAP, I told you about the change, the reshufflement of the leadership. Of course, that was just to, I told you it's a desperate face-saving measure or move, so to speak, to lure back these insurgents who have abandoned the misguided course, their misguided course and struggle to surrender to federal troops. Whatever is going on in the Northeast Theater of Operation is as a result of a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic lines of operation. These are working together side by side. And we've had about over 2,000 of them, including families and women and children that have surrendered so far. The other side is the non-kinetic that I talked about. There is what we call strategic negotiation for mitigation of conflict, which provides that a conflict could be resolved if the other party is willing to give up the cause, a misguided cause, and abandon the struggle, lay down their arms, and surrender to the troops, which is what we are witnessing at the moment. They are coming out in their droves, giving up the struggle, their misguided struggle and cause, and of course surrendering their weapons. They are coming out with their families, their wives and children. Those I classify or categorize as the susceptible or vulnerable group.
That's Brigadier General Onyema Nwachukwu, who is the Director of Army Public Relations, speaking on the surrender of these insurgents. Dr. Colonel John Adache, questions and questions and questions. First, from the account given by Brigadier General Nwachukwu, it appears the figure is over 2,000. Yeah. Of insurgents, their families, that is, including their wives and the children. How significant is that number, considering the fact that these are groups that have waged war against the Nigerian state and against the Nigerian people for 12 long years? How significant is 2,000 plus?
Well, you can only measure the significance of the number if you know the first level of Boko Haram. I'm not sure that the Nigerian military over time has been able to determine the number of Boko Haram fighters, because they keep recruiting, they keep bringing in forces from all over the place, within and outside Nigeria. Now, ISWAP has joined them, and we don't know the extent to which those surrendering are members of ISWAP. But from what we hear, those now surrendering are essentially Boko Haram elements. The kinetic and non-kinetic approaches, which the director mentioned, indeed are the hard and soft approaches to war settings. Well, it is possible the two approaches combined are responsible for the mass surrender. But even then, as an officer, I see this kind of surrender as strange. One, because why are they surrendering with the members of their families? Were the family members also combatants in war? Now, or did they just abandon the fronts, go pick their families, and are surrendering together with them because there is a window of opportunity for amnesty and so on? Just like the other Yola resource person
Mr. Wugira, yes.
Mentioned. Where are their weapons? Where are their weapons? True, there may have been a surrender of a few weapons. Are those weapons surrender proportionate to the number of elements that surrendered? So these are areas to actually look at. And that is why there is a genuine fear. Because when you talk about surrender, there is what you call the concept of false surrender, by which the enemy makes you think that they have given up, they have capitulated, but they have other motives. It could be seen as a ploy.
So it's some kind of decoy.
Yeah, yeah, that's
to
right.
get back into society and operate from within the society.
Yeah,
there is that possibility.
They have that role, and if they do not go back, of course, some of them have been coming and going back. They can be informants. You don't know the nexus, the connection that they have with the commanders over there. And when you talk about this surrender process, where are the commanders, the Boko Haram commanders? Has there been any normal process of surrender between our forces and their forces? Yeah, because this is just like people walking out of the forest. Well, I thought that there should have been conventional surrender processes. Did the Boko Haram elements get in touch with the Nigerian military to say, we want to surrender? People are coming out of the bush with their families, with load on their head, children, and so on. So honestly, I look at it as some kind of strange surrender, even if it is. But of course, the Nigerian military, to some extent, needs to be given some credit. At least we are seeing something. For the first time since the war, we are seeing some process of surrender, whether counterfeit or genuine. But at least it's a beginning. I think that what they need to do is that you bring all those that surrender together, profile them, investigate them extensively. They should have information to give. After all, the Nigerian Army, sometime a year or two ago, they brought out a calendar containing photographs of dangerous Boko Haram elements who they have been looking for. I think they have seen some of them, but where are those others? Have they all been killed? Because the story is that ISWAP has killed so many of the Boko Haram commanders who would not toe their line. So I think there is need for investigation of those who have surrendered. Mm-hmm. Let us know the extent to which they have been involved in the war. I think that will pave some way for the military, to move ahead in pursuing success.
Mm. Mr. Halilu, I mean, people like you who have had to be dislocated from your normal environment and have had to spend time in IDP camps over the years, how are they receiving this news of the surrender? What is their feeling? How do people feel about it?
As laymen, we actually are excited and are happy about it, and we saw it coming, and we had it. I'm surprised to hear a figure of 2,000 people surrendering or insurgents.
At least you heard it from the Army Director
what
of
we knew
Public
is
Affairs.
just thousands had surrendered. We had the news of the surrender a few weeks back. The ones that surrendered to Cameroonian authorities, the ones that surrendered to Nigerian authorities, it took about almost 10 days before I could even hear the news in the media about surrender. So as I say, we believe this is a genuine move for reconciliation. The only fear is, since ISWAP is involved, and ISWAP is international, well-trained, with all the logistics in place, as the colonel put it, there should be, I doubt if there was any communication for surrender. It is pure pressure. There are things I cannot say on the air, but we heard that our government too cooperated with foreign governments to bring about this surrender issue. So, and we believed it because those who are at home with whom we communicate, for the first time, our people are reaching out to farms within the past 2-3 weeks. Farms they could not cross to for over 4, 5, 7 years. And there are a few pockets of Boko Haram also attacking our people. As you are writing now, not quite 12 hours. But those are few. You understand, they refuse to follow and they cannot survive. The whole scenario now is genuine. All we pray for is a professional approach. Let all hands be on deck. The federal government of Nigeria, the United Nations, and other agencies. We victims have been crying about the role of NGOs and NGOs. And without NGOs, so many of us would have died. I never subscribed to the fact that NGOs should not be allowed. But this is time the NGOs should come in now also, because we need them.
Now, this is the process of de-radicalization, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Now, how do you think that people like you were victims of this insurgency would openly welcome these repentant insurgents into your communities?
For some years there have been pockets of surrender. We were even against the government, the way they treat those that surrender better than us, the victims. So not that there were no surrenders by the Boko Haram before. So it all depends on the individual. The fact is this, the Boko Haram, there are those diehards who have been brainwashed, who accept, or out of ignorance accepted that what they are doing is good. And as far as I'm concerned, I know nobody can claim to be a Christian or a Muslim that subscribes to Boko Haram's method. I call it Luciferian. So it's a gangster approach. These are common criminals and hardened criminals coming together. So somebody who doesn't want Nigeria to be stable, or the West Africa region, came in. Because the stories we hear about exploration of oil in our area there is part of the problem of Boko Haram, which is just, we had it before we wave it off, but it has now become a subject. And if it is true, then there is hope, honestly. The radicalization is a process. It has to be. But allowing them the way those that surrendered before were treated, there was no justice. You can't just come and give somebody better accommodation, feed him, give him clothes, when you have not identified who he really is, whether he was forced into it, whether he was just an adventurer, youthful exuberance, he went in, maybe he had regretted now. There are those that are surrendering now that are not really surrendering because they believe in what they are doing. And those are those who don't believe Jesus came or Muhammad came. So we have to be careful about sorting out. And that's why I want the involvement of experts. I repeat it, I'm a layman. Our own impression is that it's a good tidings that they are surrendering.
All right, Mr. Wugira, let me come to you and ask the same question. I mean, how do you think that the various communities that have been so adversely affected by the more than 12-year-old insurgency would receive these repentant insurgents coming back into their communities in the process, the whole process of de-radicalization and then reintegration into the various communities?
Well, under normal circumstance, no one will run away from a fellow human being like him. But this is a different ballgame entirely, under a different situation, under a different circumstance, and under a different challenge, so to say. All the people here in Adamawa State, we are peace-loving people. We are accommodating people. We are tolerant people. That is why you seldom find communal clashes amongst the people here. It is very rare. But in a situation where people who came into your society, who destroyed your source of livelihood, killed your people, made you to leave your place of abode, your place of industry, where you live peacefully over the years from generation to generation, and then all of a sudden you under a very difficult situation, exceptional circumstances, joint effort with the government and the people to get back to the society and pick up from the pieces that was left of your lives and live on, believing that the government itself is trying to put a stop to this madness. In all honesty, with all sense of responsibility, and believing that the law is sacrosanct and it shall be applied in all circumstances, on all manner of people, without fear or favor, ill will or affection. And then all of a sudden, you find out that these same people that were responsible for all the misery, for all the hardship that you went through, are, so to say, forgiven and would be reintegrated back into the society to come and live with you. I think we are in the midst of people. We feel their pulse. We associate with them. They come to us, we go to them. We know how they feel. We are part of them because we are not living in another world. We are living in the same world, in the same community, in the same society. We have siblings, we have parents, we have relations, we have friends, you know, we have acquaintances that are victims, that are still living in fear, that are still picking up from the pieces of what remains of their lives, like I said. And then for these people, and for a government to say that we are reintegrating these people because they have repented, I am of the belief and the opinion that the government is not getting it right, and there may be backlash because people are good students of history. Government may not be because they don't have statistics. Perhaps the actors are not living within principal actors, that is. They are not living within the immediate community, or they transmute into something else upon attainment of power. Here, we have to say that no society, no sane people would see such a thing happen and just say, very well, come back into our midst, we will live together. After all, we have forgiven you. You killed us for no just cause. You destroyed our source of livelihood for no just cause because you are passionate about killing people. You are passionate about initiating crisis. You are even passionate about disrupting a government, disturbing a government, you know, hindering a government from fulfilling its responsibilities that is bestowed on it, that is maintenance of law and order. You can break the law and surrender and then be integrated, be forgiven just like that. When the law is there, one person that will just steal a chicken will languish in jail for 2-3 months or pay a fine, and here you are killing people, disrupting a society, coming back because you have repented. I think government is oblivious of a lot of things, and this, there will be a very heavy price to be paid ultimately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ugira. Let's turn to Mr. Benro Olajuigbe. How easy or how difficult do you think, from your own experiences working in these various communities and carrying out risk assessments and all of that, how really easy or difficult is it for victims of crimes, people who have been traumatized over the years, killed, raped, abducted, whatever crime you can ascribe to these terrorists that they have committed? How really easy or difficult is it for people, the victims, to accept them back into their midst and behave as if all has been forgotten and forgiven?
Well, if you look at it, this whole idea, it violates all concepts and elements of protection mechanism. If you look at it, if you look at the remediation, it violates it. Those that have been assaulted, insulted, killed, has never been remediated in terms of restitutions of their livelihood, restitutions of limbs, restitutions of alternative trace for them because they have lost limb, or you have not even addressed the grief. So at the level of the grief therapy, you have not done anything to remediate that. If you look, if you move away from areas of remediation, you go to area of protection. It doesn't offer protection for people that have been subjugated by this same character. This is because if you look at the power analysis, even if you reintegrate them, what you have done is to appoint another terror to them. Because what you are demonstrating is to tell them that might is right. And you are just telling them, these are your new masters. Your killers are your masters. So it violates all elements of protection. And it does not even connote to issues of environment building. When you have a problem like this, your preoccupation should be, how do we prevent this type of carnage, this type of reckless terror in the near future? You are not thinking of that. You are not building environment. Rather, what you are doing is that you are infusing future environment with the same elements of terror that have destroyed the past to continue to the future. That is exactly what you are doing. Thereby, you are not encouraging those that have been affected. And as a matter of fact, we are talking of people that have lost their community. They have lost everything called governance. What they know in the last 12 years is state of anarchy, state of anomy, where life means nothing. You have not, those in IDP camps, what effort have you made to even reintegrate them in terms of finding livelihood for them, in terms of building their life back? And the tragedy of our society, if we are not careful, is that when you begin to elevate violators of law, I'm talking of horrendous violators of law, you are demotivating those who obey law and keep order in society. You are saying that law and order is not meant to be kept by certain elements in society. And this have become a sample from which people can draw criminality from if you allow this to go the way we are going. And we should equally be mindful that we're in a global society that has a standard way of treating terror. Let us not make mistake. We are not dealing with prisoners of war. They are not prisoners of war. They are psychopathic elements that are committed to death and disaster, that are committed to rendering society invalid, violating all law of humanity, crippling all law of armed conflict, and decimating what is left of humanity. Those are the people we are dealing with. We should begin to characterize them. Maybe government is thinking that it's dealing with prisoners of war. They are not prisoners of war in the truest meaning of prisoner of war. You are talking of elements of terrorist gang that for you to disabuse their mind, you don't need to go through the conventional way of what they have been abused as de-radicalization. You have to go back to what made them to get radicalized to this level, what they have surrendered to, and you are not going to treat them facially the way they have presented themselves, because Nigerian society must be saved from these people that are committed to destroying it at all costs. We must look at it broader than we are looking at it now.
Yes.
We must begin to contextualize, characterize them, and understand them before we take any foolish decision that will come back to haunt our society and inevitably destroy our society irreversibly.
All right, Mr. Alajigbe, we need to pause there. We need to pause there, Mr. Alajigbe.
That Nigerians,
so that we can bring in, so that we can bring in the Colonel, Dr. Adachi, to give us, educate us a bit about the difference in what he has said. Prisoners of war and terrorists. I mean, he said these are not conventional prisoners of war. But this is, the war against terrorism is, by its definition, a bit different from the normal conventional prisoners of war. But even in war, there are war criminals who should be treated as such. By the UN statistics, over 30,000 persons have died over the last 12 years. Over 3 million others have been displaced, both internally and externally. And these were carried out by certain individuals who are simply just walking in from the forest and say they are repentant.
Well, whether conventionally they are soldiers or not, the fact is that they bore arms or they bear arms, and they took on the state using all the instruments of war, which is not supposed to be in their possession anyway. But one way or the other, they got these instruments of war and they have been using them against the state, against citizens, maiming, killing, kidnapping, and doing all forms of harm, which the society today will never forget nor forgive. Therefore, if all of a sudden they start coming out in the name of surrender, you cannot differentiate between combatants and non-combatants. Well, amongst them probably maybe the women, because over time I'm not sure that we have seen women bearing arms. There's no evidence. I've not seen it, for me anyway.
Except those who have been strapped with bombs and sent into communities to go and cause a lot of damage. I
have not really seen, but for men, you cannot deny them not having bore arms against citizens of the state. Maybe if you want to differentiate, you could, maybe on the basis of gender, the women, the children, you probably might differentiate those ones from the men, because the men were combatants. Whether in uniform, conventional uniform or not, they were combatants. And therefore, I think if they are captured or they surrender, you could treat them as prisoners of war. Prisoners of war, and there is a way you treat them anyway.
They could also be treated as people who have committed war crimes.
Yeah, war crimes, and they are subject to trials. They are subject to being tried and incarcerated, not just released into society in the name of reintegration and radicalization.
Yes.
So I think that is an area that government needs to look at very, very seriously.
Is there a possibility that we just might be seeing amnesty, a general amnesty pronounced by government?
Well,
would that be a proper thing to do?
Well, for now, and that is why the public is complaining, and they are right to complain. you do not just bring people out. People do not just say, okay, I'm no more fighting. They apologize. Because what brought them out? There are so many things to it, just like we said. They are not gaining relevance within the system where they have been fighting. 2, their lines of food logistics supply may have been cut by the Nigerian military. It's a plausible reason. They are suffering, there is hunger, there is starvation, there is disease. So these are not conducive environments for them anymore.
Okay.
And therefore, they came out to surrender.
All right, Mr. Wugira, very quickly, we have very limited time now, in 60 seconds. Do you think or do you anticipate some kind of government action in terms of, say, giving these people amnesty? And if it does happen, what would it look like?
Amnesty, as has always been the case, is a good thing. But amnesty is not a free lunch to just anyone. There must be a justification for amnesty. And then for you to enjoy amnesty or to even benefit from amnesty, are you showing any reason why you should? Because it must be based on a precondition, having fulfilled certain things, and then weighing the gravity of your offense. Now, I am of the opinion, personally, that these people, the only amnesty that they deserve, if truly they are to be given one, is if they should live for the rest of their lives and die naturally, they should die naturally in isolation, in trust with the government, anticipating that lessons will be learned, so that they will have enough time to commune with God, to seek his face and his forgiveness.
Thank you
and
very
the society will also know that you cannot just wake up and start killing people in the name of whatever, for whatever reason, and expect that the society will be magnanimous to you, because you were never magnanimous.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Wugira. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts. Mr. Halilu, one last word from you. Do you expect some form of reprieve from government for these people?
Well, for now, amnesty should not be an issue, honestly, because the period this war lasted and the magnitude of the damage and the involvement of local, regional, and international bodies demands a deep investigation. But one opportunity I want to seize now and talk about is the IDPs. As a people, the victims have not been treated very well.
I think everybody acknowledges that.
We have not been treated very well. As I'm talking to you, not up to 20% of the school-age children attend school. And for the past, since 2017, and one of the causes of this insurgency, we concluded, both educated and uneducated, is ignorance. So since 2017, June, we closed down our school at Durmi camp till this moment for 4 years. So even our children cannot access education. Except one organization, Maple Leaf, came today, and they have been, of course, they are the only one who are trying their best. They carry some of the children to their school. But the government, the people of Nigeria, the FCT Education Secretariat, the NYSC Directorate, I'm not happy about that.
All right, Mr. Halilu, I'm sure that we'll have to find some other time to talk about the plight of IDPs, especially.
Thank you very much.
But for now, we must go. We want to thank our guest, Benru Olajuigbe, is the Emergency Risk Alert Initiative. He joined us virtually from Lagos. Barrister Sunday Joshua Wugira is the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Adamawa State on Public Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us from Yola. And right here in the studio, Dr. Colonel John Adache, a defense and security expert, who also joined us here. And of course, Idris Ibrahim Halilu, coordinator and spokesperson of FCT-based IDPs. The IDP camps are spread across the Federal Capital Territory and is the one who is their image maker. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining
sir.
us. Well, that's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. Bye for now.